Palomar Class, Alaska 202.
Is that Alaska 202 trying to get Palomar clearance?
Yeah, I was just going to get a radio check from Brandon.
You're loud and clear.
Thank you.
All right, welcome back to Podcasting on a Plane. And for whoever that was in Alaska 202, nice job keeping my coworker on his toes. Sorry I missed you guys, but don't forget next time. And if you're passing by, hopefully I'll be able to catch you then. So after a couple of big interview type episodes, I feel like it's time to get a little more personal again. And you know what? This is a really big sort of anniversary for me because this is the 1 year anniversary of Podcasting on a Plane. That's right. It's been a whole year since I started this thing. And, you know, when I decided to make the podcast about a year ago, I kind of thought, what would it take to make a legit podcast? I don't know. I figured if I can do it for a year and still enjoy it, and more importantly, if you're still enjoying it, then, you know, I'll keep going. So what do you think? Shall I continue? Are you getting something out of it? Today I thought maybe we'd go a little old school, just you and me. You know, there's so much to share and it was kind of hard to fit it into some of these interview style episodes, but I can't wait to fill you guys in on what's been going on behind the scenes. Plus, I have a few sort of conceptual episodes in the works and those take a really long time to put together. And because of those big interview episodes we've had, it's been kind of a while since I've talked about my patrons, so let's give them some love right now. And I want to welcome some new patrons of the show, Paula and Vince. They're ATP level supporters. Thank you guys so much for the really generous support. You know, like most podcasts and radio shows that aren't a company's ad platform, honestly, this podcast is 100% listener supported. And if you're finding value in the podcast and you want to become a supporter, head over to podcastingonaplane.com/support to learn more. So let's not forget some of the other listener supporters in the Podcasting on a Plane community, like Darren, yes, that really is his name, Wang Chung, Brian Juarez, and you know what? Congratulations to both of you guys on your new flying gigs. Well done. Jeff Riolo from Empower UAV. Jeff, I have a confession to make to you. First, sorry I missed your presentation the other day, but more importantly, I lost my photography drone a few weeks ago, and here's what happened. I did the software update. It reset the maximum flight altitude about 50 feet. And as I was attempting to climb above the standard FAA 50-foot tree, it stopped climbing and it got tangled up in the branches. It's never coming down. Ever. Anyway, Jeff, I feel like I let you down somehow. But if you're interested in starting a Part 107 drone business, then check out Jeff's website, empoweruav.com, and they can really help you out. And you know what? Speaking of other community members, I wanted to publicly congratulate patron and former guest on the show, Jill Myers. She received the Daughters of the American Revolution Service Award from the local Rancho Buena Vista chapter of the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution. Ooh, got through that one. Way to go, Jill. You know, I still feel terrible I couldn't be there to see you receive the award in person, but I'm really glad that we were able to meet up afterward. That was really cool. Good stuff. Well done. You rock and you know it. So, what's been up with me at Podcasting on a Plane Studios? Well, first off, I'm back in the CFI seat. I'm given multi-engine training again, and I forgot how good it feels to fly airplanes with more than one engine. Really. And, you know, it's so nice to work with a fellow CFI, and he's doing it to really up his game to the next level, which I think is awesome. He doesn't have his sights set on, you know, being a 747 captain or something like that. He's just doing the multi-rating that he never got, and then he's going right into being a multi-engine instructor. So, in order to do this, well, I had to go re-up my currency. And so I went up with another instructor, and it felt so nice to get down and dirty at the controls again. Oh, and check this out. A while ago, remember I talked about doing remote ground training and mentoring sessions? Well, right now I'm working with a guy who's actually on an offshore oil rig. He stays out there for a month at a time. How cool is that? Well, not the oil rig part at a month at a time, but that he's on a rig and that he's keeping up his instrument training. So he's doing the instrument rating, and while he can't fly, he keeps up on the ground portion by doing training with me in his downtime. And it's really cool to be able to keep him current knowledge-wise, even while he's away. And, you know, if sessions like that sound like something you'd be into, let me know. You can message me and we can put some sessions together. And you don't even have to be stuck out on an oil rig for a month. You know, lately it sounds like I should probably change the name of this podcast to the Aviation Film School Podcast. And you know what? I'm not going to lie. I'm getting a little obsessed with filmmaking, recording, and post-production. So, you know, these last few interview episodes, they've really reignited my interest in the visual arts. And I hope that some of you can share in that with me. And I've said it before, but having Brian Terwilliger on the show, well, he was one of the first people I wanted to have on the show ever. And having him tell his story was a huge honor. But what I didn't expect was while I was in the process of booking him on the show, I stumbled across the whole Millionaires Unit group. And having the opportunity to meet and sit down with Derek and Ron, and then later the author of the book, Mark Wortman himself, it just put so much about filmmaking into perspective for me. So while I'm probably not going to go out and make the next 1/6 right myself, I decided to put my camera to work, and I made a vlog. So obviously it's really cool and it's fun to make an audio podcast where we interview incredible people. And, don't worry, that's not going anywhere. But it's almost even better to be able to bring you all that content in a visual way too. So there's a link in the show notes. Go check it out. And this episode, it tells the story of attending the Millionaires Unit LA premiere. And it was an awesome night. And if you guys like it, just give me some love, hit that subscribe button, and I'd be happy to make a bunch more. Also, I know I've teased this one a couple times before, but when the time is right, you're going to be hearing about a new company that's revolutionizing the way that transplant organs are transported in a certain part of the world. And the technology isn't quite ready to market yet, but when it is, the company's going to be handling the flying side of a remarkable logistics operation that's literally going to give life to about one person a month who would otherwise run out of time before an organ became available. So again, when that one comes out, you're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed. Okay, so let's talk about some flying stuff. Now, I had a great listener question sent in by none other than listener Saratoga.
Hi, Brandon. This is your old friend, Saratoga. I have a question about guns in the cockpit. If a first officer is qualified to carry a gun in the cockpit, but the pilot in command doesn't want a gun in there, does the first officer have to leave it? Thanks for your help. See ya. Bye.
Wow, that was a really good question. And you know what? I don't have an answer, but I know who does.
My name is Daniel, and I'm an FFDO with a regional carrier. The FFDO program is a TSA mandate that all the airlines have agreed to operate under. So if one pilot has reservations to flying with a FFDO, unfortunately he does have to stomach that, and the airlines have agreed to work under that. And it is a volunteer program for those who want to carry, but as a captain, if you disagree with the program, it's unfortunate, but you do have to fly with a carrying first officer if that's the way, if he chooses to carry.
Well, there you have it. So now let's talk about some ATC radio stuff. Who knows what side tone is? Well, side tone is when you can hear yourself as you're transmitting. You key up your mic and suddenly things sound all different than they did before in the intercom. Well, some people love that and some people hate it, mostly because most people don't like the sound of their own voices. And I get it, that's fair enough. Plus, now you know what you sound like to all the untold numbers of people that are listening in, right? Well, why do we care? Well, who remembers this goodie?
Friendly, but they're still mopeds. You know what I mean? I still wouldn't want anyone to know if I had banged them. So, it would have been a complete disaster for 6 months. Now I'm back in Houston, which is easily one of the ugliest bases. It's all these fucking old dudes and grannies, and there's like maybe a handful of cute chicks.
Okay, someone's got a stuck mic and telling us all about their endeavors. We don't need to hear that.
Yeah, good times there. So maybe side tone is the root of all evil for those people with mic fright, but for the more seasoned, it provides a world of information. Most importantly, though, if what you're saying is going out. Yeah, so in the Southwest example, well, a little more side tone probably would have prevented that. But anyway, each radio manufacturer does it a little bit differently. Like, for those of us who grew up on King Silver Crown avionics, you sound a little bit different as you transmit, but it's not too crazy. And then same with the Garmin 430, 530 series. But who out there has now flown with these new touchscreen Garmins? Well, the ones I've flown, as you key up, the intercom just totally goes away. And all you hear is the transmission side. And it's pretty cool, but it takes a little bit of getting used to. I don't know, it's fun, but you certainly can't make the mistake of whether or not you're going out. Last weekend, I was invited to speak at the local Women in Aviation event about alternative careers in aviation. And by alternative, I mean other than the obvious three, like pilot, controller, mechanic, And not that there's anything wrong with any of those. Far from it. I do 2 out of those 3 myself. But for young people, sometimes it's hard to see the gigantic scope of aviation. The amount of design, development, testing, whatever, all the business and service it takes to keep even a small aviation operation flying is just mind-boggling. And each of those specialties, and of course many more, need intelligent, forward-thinking individuals to guide them. But one of my favorite examples for those who just can't seem to stay away from the airport is the FBO business. And that's where my career started, and we've of course talked about it several times on the podcast. Actually, fun side note, since our last discussion about the highly aggressive market penetration strategies and associated drama of the big 2 FBO chains, Atlantic and Signature, well, Atlantic has now bought out the other big jet center on my airport and is now by far the dominant service provider to jets here. So anyway, sorry to digress, back to the point. But there were a lot of young up-and-comers in aviation at this talk. both boys and girls. And, I really wanted to emphasize the importance of having a safety net for when the volatile aviation industry pulls the rug out from under you, and how having a pocket full of FAA certificates really increases your credibility and your chances of landing on your feet exponentially in those tough times. For instance, I've had the rug pulled out from under me a couple of times, and it was always really nice to have flight instruction to fall back on if needed. I mean, sure, it wasn't ideal, but I got to keep my house and my car through a terrible recession, and I was able to move on to bigger and better easily when things improved. So anyway, the talk was a lot of fun, and I want to thank everybody for showing up, but specifically a friend of mine and a friend of the podcast, Serena. You remember her from a couple episodes back. Well, she put it together, and actually it was her last event as the president of the chapter, since she has just been picked up as a naval flight officer. So congratulations, Serena. Well done. And then, of course, after the talk, members came to the tower to learn about ATC operations. And what we did was we divided everyone into small groups, and we brought them up to the tower for a visit. So for many of them, it was their first visit to any ATC facility. And for others, it was their first visit in a really long time. It's always interesting watching people's reactions when they come in to see the secret side of the system for the first time. And I think there's a misconception out there that we're all sitting in some control room wearing little white shirts and skinny ties and big framed glasses, sort of like Clint Howard in Apollo 13, right? But that's not the case at all, at least not at any ATC facility I've ever been to. But as people find out that we as controllers are professional, but more or less just like them, I usually see them leave the facility with a feeling sort of relief, and also a feeling of understanding, as opposed to the trepidation they sometimes arrive with. And that's cool. And invariably, there's always that one voice, the one that someone wants to put a face to, right? So anyway, these kids that visited, they were more or less the go-getters. But there's always one thing I've found a little bit weird in the general pilot population. And let me know what you think of this. And that is that some pilots just aren't interested in learning about ATC at all. Now, okay, I get it. You don't all have to be interested in becoming a controller, or you might view the whole ATC system as just another big government bureaucracy which is bent on impeding you from moving about freely as you fly. And okay, I can sometimes understand that, particularly when you receive like a really big delay, like for an edict time or something. But I can assure you that that is really not what the system is about. And I'm always perplexed, though, that pilots don't want to learn more about how to better use the system, right? How to use it to their advantage, and how to turn ATC services into just that, services, like an asset, not a liability. And I was thinking back to that episode with Mark Dean about, how we met and how he was on a self-guided tower tour. And it really struck me. There are CFIs out there who have virtually no knowledge of the ATC system either. When people come up to me and they tell me the stuff their CFI allegedly told them, I'm often frustrated by the inaccuracy of the information that's getting circulated within the pilot population. Anyway, when Mark came over, he was pre-solo, and he set up a visit all by himself. I mean, his CFI wasn't even interested in coming along. What does that tell you? Now, that may not be representative of the entire CFI population, and as a matter of fact, I know that it's not, but I'm curious if it's like a generational thing, or if it's something else. I don't know. So let's do a really non-scientific experiment. What do you think? I want to hear from you. As many people as can write in would be amazing. How many pilots out there have ever visited an ATC facility? And then how many would like to? And what I really want to know, though, is what did your CFIs tell you about the ATC system? Email me, okay? Share your thoughts at podcastingonaplane.com/contact, and make sure to specify whether or not you want your comments to be read on an upcoming show. I can, of course, take your name off it if that's what makes you feel comfortable. But I want to share this knowledge with people because I'm trying to really figure it out. So for those of you who have not been to an ATC facility in a while, here's a little test to see if maybe you're in need of a visit. Question 1. What separation is actually required on a runway? Question 2. How is that determined? Question 3. How can you find out? And question 4, and this is the fun one, can 2 airplanes be on the runway at the same time? All right, so now for the bonus round. Who can answer this one? How can ATC legally and safely have 4 or more airplanes on an active runway at the same time, but not in a formation flight? And none of them are parked or being towed, and no, they aren't all taxiing. Yes, at least one of them is taking off or landing. Go to podcastingonaplane.com and send me an email, or you can message me directly through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter with your answer. Any and all correct responses will have their name read on the upcoming episode, and unless, of course, you specify you'd rather not, and along with the correct answer. Anyway, if you're looking for a great way to start a dialogue with your local tower, or you just want to visit and you're not really sure how to get that conversation going, well, you'd be amazed at the success you'll have by sending a couple pizzas over there. Just saying. Anyway, now unless you think this is a one-way street, Let's make it your turn. What do pilots wish ATC knew about flying? And this is open to anyone. Pet peeves? Let them rip. Go to podcastingonaplane.com/contact and let me know. The only requirement? Let's just keep it constructive. Boy, I can't wait till this next episode. There's going to be some good stuff to share there, huh? Okay, so one question I always love to ask people is, what's the best landing you ever made? I'm sure you've got that one. You know the one. For whatever reason, it just stands out as the best. You were the smoothest, maybe the furthest away, the most accurate, the one that got you the job. You know the one. And if you want to record it, you can do it yourself and send it to me. Go to the website, podcastingonaplane.com/contact, and there's a little button you can click. Record away. Or if you don't want to do your own voiceover, email me your story and I'll narrate it for you. Each episode, I'll share someone's best landing I ever made story. So, to start us off, here's mine. The best landing I ever made. February 2nd, 2007 was the date. The airplane, November 1466 Alpha. It was a Cessna 172. The flight leg was Independence, Kansas to Wichita, Kansas. And the best landing I ever made was on runway 1 right. It was that aircraft's second landing ever. I had just picked it up from the Cessna factory in Independence, Kansas. The only flight before me was the test flight, the one that gets made right after the aircraft comes off the assembly line. The test pilot, well, he was okay with it, so he signed the log, and I got the keys. I remember waking up that morning on my coworker's couch. It was 3:25 a.m. Pacific Standard Time in Newport Beach, California, and I had stayed there the night before because we had a 6 a.m. departure from LAX, and I figured the couch would probably be a lot less painful than leaving my house in San Diego at 2:30 a.m. for a 2.5-hour drive. So, up we got. We drove to LAX, and after an hour in security at Terminal 5, we made that flight to Salt Lake City. My colleagues and I, we were headed to Cessna headquarters in Wichita, and we were a large Cessna dealer. We were going there to meet with some upper management at Cessna and to put some faces to the names we did business with every day at Cessna Finance Company. After an hour in Salt Lake City, we boarded our SkyWest CRJ to Tulsa, and there we picked up the usual rental car and made the usual 45-minute drive up I-75 to Independence, with a brief layover at the Chili's in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, which, by the way, I don't recommend. We left the car there in Independence. Each of us picked up a factory-fresh airplane, and we took off one by one for Wichita. The flight is really short, even in a Cessna. And I was glad every new Cessna at the time had G1000 avionics. I'm not going to lie, everything along the Kansas-Oklahoma border looks exactly the same. But I found Wichita just fine. ATC cleared me to land on runway 1 right, and now I'm not sure if it was the tiredness or something special in the water from back in Bartlesville, but as I flared for touchdown, I couldn't tell whether I landed or not. Seriously. I taxied over to Yingling Aviation, where we left the planes for the next 2 nights while we had our meetings, and then I flew the plane back to Long Beach, California, with 3 more landings in between. 1 at Santa Fe, 1 in Blythe, and 1 in Thermal. Although none of them were nearly as good as that one back in Wichita, right in front of Cessna headquarters. And that's the thing about good landings, you know? Sometimes you have passengers, but the best ones, well, they're usually when you don't. So, what's the best landing you ever made? We'll share it next time on Podcasting on a Plane. Podcasting on a Plane is a listener-supported podcast. To learn more about how to become a valued supporter, head on over to podcastingonaplane.com/support to learn more.